Hey, welcome to another video. So today we're going to be going into everything there is to know about Darth Plagueis, but before we begin, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, let's jump straight into it. Several years before Higo Damask II's birth, his father, a Force-sensitive moon named Car Damask, who worked as a middle-ranking banking clan agent, met renowned starship designer Rugnus Nome, or Darth Tenebris, by chance on Highport Space Center. Tenebris, in his capacity as reigning Dark Lord of the Sith, had been searching for the right apprentice to train for the sole purpose of eventually possessing, through the virulent midichlorians he had dubbed maxichlorians, in order for his consciousness to survive until the creation of the Chosen One, who would be seized by the Sith. Years after his meeting with Damask, Tenebris discovered another Force-sensitive moon, a lower caste female, and conscripted her as a disciple, for she was not strong enough with the Force to be considered for apprenticeship. Tenebris, using Bith scientific methods, had predicted that the offspring of Damask and his disciple would be strong in the Force. For this purpose, he tasked his moon disciple to seduce Car Damask and bear him a child. Born on Megiddo sometime between 200 and 100 BBY, the son of Car Damask, who had become the planet's administrator for more than 10 years earlier, and his codicil wife, Higo Damask II, was named after his grandfather. Growing up in a domed city on a perpetually frozen and sparsely populated planet under the overly attentive gaze of his mother, Higo had a very atypical childhood for a moon. She recorded every detail of his upbringing, encouraged him to talk with her about even the most furtive of his thoughts, and provided playmates for him, observing his interactions with them and interrogating him about his feelings regarding each specific youngling. Before his 5th birthday, Higo discovered that he could manipulate the Force by using it to ply the feelings of his playmates. He eventually tested his limits of his power by using a very potent mind trick on a moon youngling he had grown to dislike, convincing the boy to commit suicide by jumping into a courtyard from a high window. Damask's mother instructed her son to keep his powers secret, and confided in him that they shared the gift. Damask's parents handed him over to Nom as a youngling in return for a career advancement for Car, presumably arranged through the Dark Lord's shadowy intelligence network. Tenebris took the child as his apprentice, the one he intended to eventually possess, naming him at some unknown point Darth Plagueis. Plagueis left Megiddo for the first time in his life and began his life as a Sith. 5 years after handing his son to the Dark Lord, Car Damask was appointed director of the Treasury branch of the Intergalactic Banking Clan, realizing his lifelong dream of wielding real power within the IBC. His codicil wife disappeared without a trace. 5 years after that, Plagueis learned the truth of Tenebris's machinations that led to his birth. Car Damask eventually rose to the top of the IBC as chairman. Darth Plagueis traveled the galaxy with his master, masquerading as Rugnus Nome's young accountant, while the two carried out the Sith plan of spreading discontent to ripen the galaxy for their rule. During his travels, Plagueis became acquainted with the backwater of the galaxy. In the years to come, he would feel at home in the run-down spaceports, seedy top cafes, and rough cantinas common in the Rim. Around the year 104 BBY, Plagueis undertook the ritual of visiting Cursid and fighting its natives with Darth Tenebris for the first time. Plagueis later told his own apprentice that his first mission under the tutelage of Lord Tenebris was undertaken in the 25th year of his apprenticeship. At some point after 99 BBY, Tenebris asked his apprentice to murder Carid Santh the Elder. The assassination was accomplished by means of telekinetic strangulation during a banquet on Coralag. The Sith Lords took advantage of the fact that bloat eel was served in order to blame Santh's death on the chiefs. Following this trial, Plagueis veered from the Sith path, as often happened with apprentices when they first discovered the potency of the dark side. Plagueis later claimed to Palpatine that he had returned to Munilis to meet with the rest of his clan. As the son of Car Damask's codicil wife, however, he was never accepted by his half-brothers and sisters, who saw him as an interloper and sought to have him disinherited. Soon afterwards, Car Damask fell gravely ill at a relatively young age for a moon, and it was discovered that he had a rare congenital defect in his tertiary heart that he had passed on to his children with his first wife. Plagueis, having been born to a different mother, did not carry the gene, and he watched as his siblings and clan mothers spent millions of credits on a geneticist to help cure the condition. Plagueis claimed that he had hired the geneticist to conduct phony treatments, and that he took pleasure in his siblings' early deaths, inheriting the wealth they had tried to deny him. Palpatine suspected that the story was embellished to goad him into killing his family. Plagueis later admitted that only some of it was true. Regardless of the circumstances, at some point, Darth Plagueis inherited the Damask fortune and took over the Sojourn gatherings from his father. Gatherings were clandestine annual meetings of politicians, the leaders of various trade organizations and cartels, and even gangsters, hosted by Damask Holdings on the moon of Sojourn. Higo Damask II transferred the gatherings from the elite secret club it had been under his father into a Sith tool to influence the most influential beings of the galaxy, in order to prepare the Republic for the submission to an enlightened elite promised by Darth Tenebris. During their long years together, Tenebris did not invest in properly training Plagueis as a Sith. Instead, he sent him on various missions he judged pointless as a distraction, and cultivated his apprentices unprecedented talent for midichlorian manipulation, all the while making sure that the moon would only apply it to the preservation and extension of his own life, thus ensuring he would live long enough for Tenebris to possess the body of the Chosen One. Plagueis developed his powers in the Force, and in the mundane world largely on his own, and took them further than his master believed. Tenebris also took on a second apprentice, a Bith to whom he bestowed the name Darth Venomous. Although Venomous was apprised of Plagueis' existence, Plagueis was kept in the dark. He believed he was his master's sole apprentice, in accordance to the Rule of Two, a rule which he came to resent. In 67 BBY, Plagueis in his role as Higo Damask secretly negotiated for the Trade Federation to accept the expansion of free trade zones in the Outer Rim territories, even though this would cost it some of its shipping monopoly and expose it to competition from startup companies. In exchange, the Trade Federation received full voting privileges as a functional constituency of the Galactic Senate, though the leadership remained disgruntled at the loss of some of its monopoly. Meanwhile, Plagueis advised the intergalactic banking clan to invest in Outer Rim and trans-Parlimenian shipping to take advantage of the new arrangement. 67 years before the Battle of Yavin, Darth Tenebris learned of a cortosis deposit on the planet Baldamek, and personally went there to study it with his apprentice, a 10 droid, and an M2 mining probe provided by Subtext Mining. What neither Tenebris apparently nor Plagueis knew was that this probe had been sabotaged by an unknown party, with Subtext complicity. Inside a cave on the side of a steep escarpment on the shore of the Northern Sea, the two Sith Lords landed their craft, a ship designed by Tenebris himself, and set out to survey the Cortosis vein, using enviro suits to protect them from the deadly heat. Tenebris ascribes special significance to the mission, as he believed that two Sith Lords mining Cortosis at the apex of the Rule of Two era amounted to the closing of a circle that had began with Darth Bane, the Sithari of legend, starting on the path towards darkness in the Apatros Cortosis mines. The Enterprise soon came to an unexpected end, however, when the droid reported that the mining probe had discovered a pocket of highly combustible variant of lethane directly beneath the borehole. Tenebris ordered the droid to have the probe deactivated, but it failed. The probe overrode the droid's commands. After the two Sith unsuccessfully tried to damage the probe using Force Lightning, they hastened to return to the grotto where they had landed the ship, leaving the droid behind. Plagueis made sure to let it know that it had been useful before running away. As the two Sith ran through the superheated caverns, Plagueis noted that his master was uncharacteristically distressed, as if he sensed something alarming in the Force. They had just made it to the grotto near the surface, where the gas explosion caught them. Tenebris conjured a barrier to shield them from the fireball, and when the ceiling began to collapse, he used the Force to protect the ship. It was then that Plagueis had the impression of hearing the Force whisper to him that the moment had come to claim his stake to the dark side, and lost no time in contemplation. He betrayed his master by bringing the huge slabs of stone down on him using the Force. The rockfall, however, also buried their ship, trapping them both. Racing to Tenebris' side, Plagueis tried to comfort his master. The Bith went along with his apprentice's charade, and conferred the mantle of Sith Master to him. Plagueis, accepting responsibility for his action, informed Tenebris that his death would mark the end of the Rule of Two, and that he would escape the grotto even without the ship. He then broke the Bith's neck, killing him. Both Plagueis and Tenebris had waited a long time for that moment. The latter had hoped that his apprentice would have made his move years earlier, and was happy to finally be allowed the chance to implement his secret scheme, while the former had been wanting to carry the grand plan to completion alone, without being burdened with the formalities of the Banite system. As Plagueis reached out in the Force to study Tenebris's dying midichlorians, the maxichlorians carrying the Bith's intelligence slipped out of his body undetected, and infected a wound on the moon's lower back, caused by a rock or some other projectile. As the maxichlorian virus propagated inside Plagueis' cells, Tenebris accessed his apprentice's power of foresight, the powers he had to give up himself in order to code his intelligence into the retrovirus. What he witnessed horrified him. Instead of providing access to the Chosen One, Darth Plagueis died at the hands of his own apprentice, the Shadow. After the retrovirus completed the task it had been engineered for, the infection of all the cells in Plagueis' body, the Moon Dark Lord, had lost powers of foresight. Tenebris, after slipping out of his apprentice's body in panic, remained trapped as a disembodied essence in the cave. In the wake of his master's death, Darth Plagueis found himself adrift in the Force, completely consumed by the dying energy of Darth Tenebris's midichlorians. The intense focus on his master's final moments caused Plagueis to lose track of time, and when he finally regained his senses, he realized the gravity of his situation. He had been injured during an encounter, and his ship was severely damaged. He could not repair it or use the Force to access the oculus that led to the surface. Forced to rely on his wits and his training, Plagueis turned to telekinesis to move the rubble obstructing the way. He carefully created a path using the debris to form a pile that he could climb, allowing him to reach the surface. After hours of painstaking work, he finally freed himself and entered the ship's cockpit, where he retrieved his travel bag, which contained essential items, his lightsaber and a change of clothes, and a comlink. He also took Tenebris's lightsaber and comlink items that might serve him well later. With the immediate crisis of survival behind him, Plagueis took a moment to assess the situation. He reassured himself that the scene around him was not a sign of foul play, but rather the result of an unfortunate starship crash. There is no clear evidence pointing to a crime, and Plagueis was careful not to leave traces that would implicate him. Confident that his actions had gone unnoticed, he left the cave, setting his sights on finding the nearest city with a starport. Using a map he found on Tenebris's comlink, he navigated his way to a settlement a few hundred kilometers south, carefully avoiding the planet's indigenous inhabitants. The planet's natives were not inherently hostile, but were unfamiliar and potentially dangerous to someone like Plagueis, whose presence might attract their suspicion. By the time night fell, Plagueis had reached a shallow cave where he sought shelter. Exhausted and injured, he reflected on the events that had transpired. As he tried to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He sensed a presence nearby, a being whose power seemed near equal to his own. For a moment, he wondered if it was the spirit of Darth Tenebris come to haunt him, as legends suggested happened to Sith Lords like Darth Bane, who had desecrated the tombs of his predecessors. However, Plagueis, confident in his survival and in his future as the ruler of the Sith, refused to be concerned. He believed that his power and ambition were far beyond any usurper's grasp, and that Tenebris' spirit would be no threat. He dismissed the sensation and fell into a restless sleep, determined to press on with his plans. When the first light of dawn broke, Plagueis awoke to resume his journey. His condition had worsened overnight. The infected wound on his body sustained during a cave-in was now causing him significant discomfort, and he also was plagued by biting insects. Despite his physical discomfort, he relied on the dark side to push forward, forcing himself to run as he immersed himself in its energy to ease his suffering. His hunger gnawed at him, but he resisted the temptation to harm the people nearby. Instead, he hunted for sustenance, settling for bats and dead fish washed up on the shore. Though not ideal, the meager food helped keep his strength up as he continued to trek towards the city. Finally, after enduring the harsh environment, Plagueis arrived at the city. As he entered, he experienced a powerful vision of the future, a vision of war and turmoil for the planet Baldamek. His path forward was beginning to take shape in his mind, and he knew that his destiny would be intertwined with the oncoming conflict. Upon reaching the starport, Plagueis began to look for an appropriate ship to stow away in, eventually finding one that suited his needs. The ship was called Woebegone, and it was scheduled to depart for several planets in the Aural sector. Plagueis, ever meticulous, recorded the ship's registry number, LS4473, into his comlink. He then took advantage of the sleeping Conmay's night shift guards to sneak into the spaceport authority building. There he found the registrar's office, and with his considerable technical skill, Plagueis was able to slice into the building's control network. He accessed the ship's records and discovered that the Woebegone was captured by the Togruta woman named Ellen Law. The ship was to carry fresh sea life in refrigerated containers, with the cargo having already cleared customs. Seeing an opportunity to secure passage to Munilist, Plagueis decided to stow away on the vessel. Hiding within one of the refrigerated containers, using his moon physiology, he regulated his blood flow to survive the freezing temperatures of the cargo hold. When the crew discovered Plagueis aboard the ship, they were understandably suspicious. However, Plagueis managed to convince Captain Law that he would compensate her for the spoiled cargo and even reward the crew generously for allowing him passage. Though he refrained from revealing his true identity, the crew remained wary of him. The situation, however, soon escalated. The negotiations turned sour, and in a fit of cold rage, Plagueis killed the entire crew, sparing only the droid 11-4D. He eliminated Captain Law, the first mate Makap, the pilot Blur, navigators Semislali, and the crew members of Duzudo, Wandu, and Rosh. To his annoyance, he found that he could not sustain the midichlorians of the crew members he had slain. Their deaths offered him no benefit beyond the elimination of those who may have posed a threat to his plans. With the crew dead, Plagueis ordered 11-4D, the droid he had spared, to set a course for his next destination, following coordinates that he had carefully prepared. He then retreated to the captain's quarters, where he took a minute to rest and recover from the physical toll of his journey. The droid attended to his wounds, tending to the infected injury and providing him with food and drink, and began to plan his next move. Although Plagueis had faced setbacks, the death of his master and the subsequent chaos had not deterred him. Instead, he was more determined than ever to secure his place at the top of the Sith Order and fulfill the grand designs he had set in motion. So Darth Venomous was a Bith, a species known for their high intelligence and distinctive appearance, characterized by large bulbous heads and strong mental abilities. Venomous's encounter with Darth Plagueis, the Sith Lord, marked a critical turning point in their relationship in the Sith legacy. Plagueis, along with his droid assistant 11-4D, had arrived on a remote location called Deep Space Demolition and Removal, a site owned by Boss Cabra, an ally within the Black Sun criminal syndicate. At this place, Plagueis ordered that his ship, the Woebegone, be sealed and scrapped. He also arranged for a change of clothes and a refueled ship to take him to the planet Munilist, where he was expected. Days later, he arrived at Highport Space Station, accompanied by a retune of loyal followers from Damask Holdings and Akanchi's Sun Guards. He was greeted by Larsh Hill and several members of Damask Holdings, as well as a surprise meeting with the chairman Tanith of the Intergalactic Banking Clan, or the IBC. While on the planet's sojourn, Plagueis attended a political gathering, where he met various influential figures, including Garjula the Hutt, Senator Pax's team of the Grand Protectorate, and Kahuk, a representative of the Yinkori Council of Elders. During the gathering, Garjula sought Plagueis' help to fund the restoration of the Bunta Eve classic pod race Urquid on Tatooine, to which Plagueis agreed, arranging for her to contend with agents of the Bank of Agaru. Meanwhile, Kahuk requested support for Yinkor's representation in the Galactic Senate, though Plagueis was more interested in asserting the Yinkori's rumored resistance of Force suggestion. A conflict arose when the Pax team opposed Garjula's plans, fearing that a new pod race would hurt the revenues of Malastare. Although Plagueis offered a solution in the form of increased fuel rates, the team angrily dismissed it, feeling that the proposal only benefited Plagueis' interests. Afterward, Plagueis met with his representatives of Subtext Mining, a company linked to the Guzum species. He had them reveal the location of a valuable plasma reserve beneath the city of Theed on Naboo. Discovered recently, the reserve had the potential to be highly profitable for Damask Holdings. Though Plagueis was furious with them for causing the death of his previous Sith Master, Darth Tenebrous, he chose to spare their lives, ordering his Sun Guards to relocate them to a remote world in the Tingle Arm to keep them in reserve for future use. However, things soon took a darker turn. After the gathering, Plagueis was informed by his Sun Guards that an intruder had breached their security. Sensing that this was the work of a Force-sensitive individual, Plagueis ventured into the Forest of Sojourn to confront the intruder. Initially believing it to be a Jedi, Plagueis was caught off guard when the assailant revealed himself to be a Bith wielding a crimson lightsaber. At first, Plagueis thought the figure might be his deceased master Tenebrous, or perhaps an artificially created offspring. The Bith, however, identified himself as Darth Venomous, an apprentice chosen by Tenebrous. Venomous claimed that his mission was to kill Plagueis in order to fulfill his master's last command and legitimize his own title as a Sith. The confrontation quickly escalated into a fierce duel. Plagueis, initially thrown off by Venomous's fighting style, one that mimicked his own, was temporarily at a disadvantage. However, Plagueis eventually overcame Venomous, disarming him and forcing him to his knees. Despite being defeated, Venomous offered to serve Plagueis as his apprentice, but Plagueis had different plans. Instead of accepting the offer, he used the opportunity to make an example of Venomous. He forced the Bith to poison himself with a Kama bloom, rendering him unconscious. Plagueis then ordered his sun guards to locate Venomous's ship and transport his comatose body to the remote world of Abora, where Plagueis intended to use him as a test subject for his midichlorian experiments. Plagueis' investigation into Venomous's ship revealed that the Bith had been monitoring several potential Force-sensitive individuals as possible apprentices. Determined to eliminate his rivals and secure his position as the dominant Sith Lord, Plagueis, accompanied by 11-4D, embarked on a mission to track down and eliminate these Force users. One of his first stops was Liana, where he visited the Colliders Casino on Liana City. There, with the help of casino security, Plagueis discovered that Shiedo, Skin Shifter, had been among Venomous's targets. After tracking the Shiedo across the city, the creature, shifting between various forms, was shot in the brain by 11-4D. The Shiedo revealed that he had been transferring winnings to the Black Sun associate, Carole Santh, who was in debt to some of their Vigos. After letting the Shiedo go, Plagueis suggested that he try and use the remaining money to start a new life. Next, Plagueis and 11-4D traveled to Selikami, where they encountered an Itochi prophet who had been spreading predictions about the fall of the Republic and the Jedi Order. Plagueis interrupted her speech, revealing that the Itochi had unknowingly been chosen by Venomous for her prophetic abilities. He deemed her words a threat to his cause and killed her by electrocution. He then used a mind trick on her followers to erase any memory of the event, ensuring his escape. Plagueis' journey took him next to Beldam, where he learned of another one of Venomous's potential apprentices, the Nautolan named Natlair, who had recently escaped from a psychiatric facility with the help of a psychologist. It was soon revealed that the psychologist had been nothing more than Venomous in disguise. As Plagueis continued his search, he received a report of a Force user wreaking havoc on the world of Abraxan. There he encountered Jedi Master Ninkata and his Padawan, Lo Buck, who were investigating a series of mysterious murders. Keeping his own Force abilities hidden, Plagueis confronted Lair and offered him a chance to become his apprentice, if he could eliminate the investigating Jedi. Plagueis watched from the shadows as Lair was swiftly struck down by the Jedi in a brief duel, further confirming the death of yet another potential rival to Plagueis' Sith ambitions. Through a series of brutal actions and manipulative tactics, Plagueis moved closer to securing his position as the dominant Sith Lord, all while testing the limits of his power and experiments. The saga of his interaction with Darth Venomous marked the beginning of a deeper, more personal rivalry that would shape the future of the Sith Order. In 65 BBY, Plagueis, operating under the public alias of Higo Damask, visited Naboo to personally assess the political situation. At this time, Naboo was in the midst of an intense election season, with two opposing factions vying for control of the planet. The conservative faction, which favored maintaining Naboo's status as an isolationist republic member world, was determined to keep the planet's resources used only for internal purposes and prevent exploitation by external megacorporations. On the other side, the liberal faction sought to integrate Naboo more fully into the Galactic Republic, believing that it would benefit from broader trade relationships. The candidate for the liberal faction, Bon Taplo, gained the support of both Damask Holdings and the Trade Federation by pledging to open Naboo to external trade, particularly through exploitation of the planet's rich plasma resources. To further align the interests of the Trade Federation with his plans, Plagueis facilitated the construction of a new spaceport in Theed, which would serve as the key point for exporting the plasma, thereby ensuring their cooperation with the Free Trade Zone Agreement. Traditionally, Plagueis viewed Naboo as a potential future base of operations for his larger schemes. Taplo's main opponent, the conservative candidate, was backed by a coalition of royalists and traditionalists including Kosinga Palpatine, the influential patriarch of House Palpatine, and Vidar Kim, a prominent Naboo representative. Both figures were deeply entrenched in the planet's political landscape and were determined to oppose Taplo's liberal vision. During his time on Naboo, Plagueis discovered that Taplo had valuable informant within the rival campaign. His agents identified the informant as a 17-year-old student in the legislative youth program named Palpatine, who was the son of Kosinga Palpatine, the very figure opposed to Tapalo. Intrigued by this, Palpatine met with the young Palpatine at the legislative program's headquarters in Theed. Plagueis persuaded him to show him around town in his prized speeder, which allowed them to converse more freely. Through this encounter, Plagueis learned several key details about Palpatine. The young aristocrat had a secret interest in politics, though he was hesitant to openly acknowledge it. He also had a modest appreciation for art and wanted Naboo open up to the broader galaxy. However, the most significant revelation was the stained and long-standing relationship between Palpatine and his father. The young man's isolation from his father fascinated Plagueis, who saw potential in the boy's intelligence and ambition. Recognizing an opportunity, Plagueis made Palpatine an offer. He would use him as a spy within T'Polo's camp, ensuring that Damask Holdings' interests were secured in the upcoming election. In exchange, Palpatine demanded that he report directly to Plagueis, by bypassing any intermediaries. Plagueis, sensing that the young man was seeking a father figure he never had, was intrigued by Palpatine's motivations and ambition. Over the next 2 days, as Plagueis left Naboo, he found himself constantly thinking about Palpatine, pondering the implications of this new relationship. At the same time, Plagueis was dealing with fallout from a political conflict with Senator Pack's team of the Grand Protectorate, arising from his support of Gardulla during the Phobos Memorial Run on Malastare. This tension caused Plagueis to seriously consider Palpatine as a potential figurehead for his larger plans to bring the galaxy under Sith control, possibly even as Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. After his initial visit, Darth Plagueis returned to Naboo, accompanied by a retinue of representatives from Damask Holdings and the intergalactic banking clan, the IBC. Their arrival was met with immediate attainment by a group of security personnel, and the Moon and his entourage were held in a spaceport holding area for about an hour. After this brief delay, 2 palace guards arrived to escort Plagueis to a waiting Gean speeder. The Magister was then taken to the Convergence, a selected estate in the Lake County, where he was confronted by Kosinga Palpatine, the father of a man who would become his future Sith apprentice. Kosinga, having noticed the growing connection between Plagueis and his eldest son, expressed his concern and made it clear that he wanted the Moons to stay away from Naboo. He was particularly insistent that Plagueis should be able to sever his relationship with his son, Senator Palpatine. However, Plagueis remained unfazed by these threats. Undeterred, he traveled next to Chandrila to meet with the young Palpatine, who was at the time participating in a month-long retreat with the Legislative Youth Program. Upon meeting, it quickly became apparent that the younger Palpatine was furious with his father's interference. His anger was so intense that Plagueis could feel it ripple through the Force. The young man demanded Plagueis' assistance, but instead of offering a simple solution, Plagueis encouraged him to use this conflict as an opportunity to break free from his family's constraints. Through a tense exchange, Palpatine finally revealed his true ambitions, his desire for ultimate power. In response, Plagueis offered his alliance, but on the condition that Palpatine sever all ties with his family, who Plagueis saw as a limiting factor in his potential. In a calculated move, Plagueis shared a carefully crafted story with Palpatine, a blend of fact and fiction designed to inspire him. He spoke of how, after the death of his own father, he had taken drastic measures to protect his interest from those he deemed less enlightened. Plagueis described how he had poisoned his family in order to inherit the wealth of the Damask lineage. This narrative, while grounded in some truth, also was a strategic tool, pushing Palpatine to confront his father and the limitations he had imposed. Plagueis had intentionally arranged for Kosinga's spies to witness their meeting on Chandrila, ensuring that the confrontation between father and son would be inevitable. As Plagueis had planned, the situation soon spiraled into tragedy. When Palpatine prepared to return to Naboo aboard the Jaffa 3, one of his father's security guards arrived to escort him back to the family ship. But before the ship even reached hyperspace, Palpatine murdered his entire family. Once the deed was done, he contacted Plagueis, who reassured him that all the evidence linking him to the murders would be erased. Nothing would remain to tie Palpatine to the disappearance of his family. At this moment, Plagueis saw the full scope of the young man's nature. He was ambitious, insidious, and completely devoid of empathy, traits that marked him as a perfect candidate for the Sith. Plagueis recognized that Palpatine was ready to embrace the dark side of the Force, and that his rise would be inevitable. In a cabin aboard the Quantum Colossus, as the starship made its journey through the stars, Palpatine knelt before his new master. He swore his loyalty to the Sith Order, and Plagueis bestowed upon him a new identity, one that would forever mark him as his apprentice, Darth Sidious. Thus began the transformation of a promising but disillusioned politician into a Sith Lord that would one day shape the fate of the galaxy. Plagueis had successfully manipulated his emotions, stripped him of his familial ties, and forged an ally whose ambitions matched his own. The dark side had claimed yet another apprentice. After the brutal murder of his family, young Sidious, now the Dark Lord of the Sith, began his arduous path towards becoming a Sith under the tutelage of Darth Plagueis. This period of training was one of gradual refinement, but of total transformation. The purpose was to break Sidious down as an individual, forcing him to shed his former identity in order to rebuild himself as a servant of the dark side. The training was designed to push Sidious to his absolute limits, eradicating his previous weaknesses and turning them into strengths that would serve his rise to power. Plagueis, a calculating and far-seeing Sith, made a promise to Sidious that their relationship would be different from the traditional Sith master-apprentice dynamic dictated by the Rule of Two, a rule that had long created a cycle of secrecy, betrayal, and mistrust between Sith. Unlike past Sith Lords, who held back knowledge or sought to eliminate one another as threats to their power, Plagueis and Sidious would work together in concert, each sharing their knowledge openly and without fear of betrayal. There would be no jealousy or hidden agendas between them, as their bond would be rooted in a mutual ambition. This unique relationship was meant to shape a new era for the Sith, one where power would be wielded not through the destruction of the weaker, but through the strategic accumulation of knowledge and control. As Sidious began his training under Plagueis, he was granted access to the Sith archives, an extensive repository of Sith knowledge accumulated over millennia. This treasure trove contained the teachings, philosophies, and experiences of generations of Sith Lords, passed down from master to apprentice. However, as Sidious perused the archives, he realized that the vast array of Sith knowledge was fragmented, with each Sith emphasizing their own doctrine. Figures such as Mother Talzin, Source Sin, Darth Malgus, Darth Bane, and even Darth Plagueis himself had their own distinct interpretations of Sith philosophy, and their teachings, as such, often clashed with one another. Sidious understood that in order to achieve his ultimate goal of galactic domination, he would need to go beyond these teachings and unify the Sith path into a singular, coherent version of power. Sidious's training under Plagueis spanned decades, during which time Plagueis imparted every shred of knowledge he had amassed, ensuring that the power he had gathered would not die with him. This education was not merely theoretical, it was a hands-on experience, and Sidious was forced to confront the raw aspects of the dark side of the Force. His training took him to numerous worlds, each serving as a trial to strengthen him. On Boyuant, Sidious was made to hunt in the wild, pushing his physical and mental abilities. On Hippori, he engaged in brutal combat with battle droids, refining his skills in lightsaber combat and strategy. On Cursed, Plagueis took Sidious through a ritual killing of native warriors, an act meant to teach him the value of sacrifice and control, further forcing his understanding of power and death in the service of the Sith. Throughout these grueling lessons, Plagueis pushed Sidious not just to master his Force abilities, but to master his emotions as well. Sidious was forced to confront his deepest fears, those primal emotions that could either empower or cripple him. Plagueis would often deny his apprentice the pleasures of life, taking from him the things he cherished in order to test his resolve. This was part of a larger lesson. Emotions like envy, hatred, and fear were necessary to master the dark side, but they were also tools, means to an end. Plagueis taught Sidious that these emotions should not govern him. Rather, they should be wielded strategically, as a way to transcend conventional mortality and achieve greater goals. Through these painful lessons, Sidious was slowly shaped into a ruthless, calculating figure he would become, a Sith Lord capable of making the ultimate sacrifice for his vision of galactic control. The most important lessons Plagueis imparted to Sidious were those concerning power itself. The Sith were not mere killers or tyrants, as some of their predecessors had been, but they were architects. The true Sith were visionaries, shaping the future of the galaxy through manipulation, subterfuge, and patience. Plagueis impressed upon Sidious that to rule was not simply destroy one's enemies, but to understand the mechanics of government, the subtleties of political manipulation, and the long game of power. Their ultimate goal was not just to defeat the Jedi or overthrow the Republic, it was to control everything, to bend the galaxy for their will in a way that was beyond the comprehension of any ruler before them. Sidious learned the art of patience from Plagueis. The Master told him that his ascension would not happen overnight, that their plans for galactic domination would take time, years, even decades to come to fruition. Not a standard day sooner than a decade, Plagueis had told him. This long-term vision was essential for the Sith to succeed in their rise to power. They would not act impulsively, nor would they reveal their hand prematurely. Their influence would grow steadily, and in the shadows, until the galaxy was so completely under their control that no force could oppose them. Over time, Sidious transformed under Plagueis' tutelage. He became not only a master of the dark side of the Force, but also a master of his own mind and body. He learned to harness the power of his emotions without being consumed by them. And he learned to think like a ruler. Plagueis' training, though severe, had a singular purpose: to prepare Sidious to be the true heir to the Sith legacy, to reshape the galaxy in his own image, and to ensure that the Sith would never again be limited by their past failures. In the end, Sidious would become the embodiment of that vision, using everything he had learned to orchestrate the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Galactic Empire, a dark new order that would last for many generations to come. By 54 BBY, Darth Plagueis and his apprentice Darth Sidious had set their sights on manipulating the political structure of the galaxy to serve their Sith ambitions. One of their primary objectives was to place Ars Varuna on the throne of Naboo, a pawn in their larger game to weaken the political power of the Jedi and the Galactic Republic. As part of their plan, they supported Varuna's proposal to establish a fighter corps for Naboo, positioning the planet to stand firm against the growing influence of the Trade Federation. However, their pilot, to elevate Varuna to power, faced opposition from within the Senate, particularly the Senator Vidar Kim. Kim, a seasoned and vocational senator, was a staunch adversary of the Trade Federation and had long been opposed to their growing influence. His political stance was clear. He did not believe in compromising with powerful, corrupt forces. This made him an obstacle to Sidious and Plagueis' larger goals, particularly when it came to oppose the political reforms that the Sith Lords were attempting to push forward. However, Kim's political fervor was not the only thing that made him a target for elimination. In the wake of a devastatingly personal tragedy, Senator Kim's mental state began to deteriorate. His entire family had been killed in a mysterious accident involving an airspeeder crash on the planet Kadara. This loss sent Kim into a spiral of grief and suspicion, causing him to believe that powerful political enemies, including Ars Varuna and Bon Tapalo, were responsible for the deaths, orchestrating the accident as part of a larger plot to force his political retirement. Kim's paranoia grew, and he became increasingly obsessed with avenging his family and exposing what he saw as widespread corruption. Kim's growing instability took a dangerous turn when he tried to draw his only remaining family member, his son, Jedi Knight Ronar Kim, into his increasingly twisted worldview. The senator attempted to persuade Ronar to leave the Jedi Order and investigate the conspiracy he believed was at the heart of the family's tragedy. However, Ronar, loyal to his Jedi vows, refused his father's demands, which only deepened Kim's sense of betrayal and fueled his belief in a larger galaxy-wide conspiracy against him. In 52 BBY, Senator Kim, convinced that a conspiracy was at play, began to consider more drastic measures. He even began to speak openly of his plans to expose the corruption he believed was festering within the highest levels of government, including Varuna and Tapalo. His actions, though well-intentioned in his mind, became more erratic, and it soon became clear to Plagueis and Sidious that he was a liability. Not only had Kim become a potential threat to their broader scheme, but his growing instability threatened to bring unnecessary attention to their manipulation of Naboo's politics. Sidious and Plagueis decided that Kim's continued presence in the Senate posed a risk to their ambitions. His unpredictable behavior, combined with his efforts to recruit his son into his cause, meant that he could not be allowed to continue. Plagueis, ever the strategist, saw an opportunity in Kim's removal. The senator's death would eliminate a potential source of disruption while further sending a message to the galaxy that the Sith were in control of the unfolding political drama. Sidious, working through his contracts, arranged for Kim's assassination. A highly skilled and Maladian assassin was hired to kill the senator, with orders to make the attack public but leave no trace leading back to the Sith. Kim was murdered while traveling in an open-air speeder with his son on Coruscant. The assassin fled a lethal shot, killing Kim instantly. To avoid capture, the assassin then took his own life, leaving no chance for anyone to question his motives or pursue a trail of evidence. Kim's death was presented as tragic but isolated, and the assassin's suicide ensured no investigation would uncover the true masterminds behind the killing. With the senator gone, the Sith's influence over Naboo and the Senate strengthened. Plagueis and Sidious had successfully removed the key obstacle from their plans, and the galaxy would not learn of the Sith's role in the senator's demise. The assassination of Vidar Kim, while appearing to be a simple political maneuver, was part of a larger, complex web of manipulation and power building that the Sith Lords were weaving. It marked another step in their ongoing efforts to place themselves in positions of ultimate control over the galaxy, showing how far they were willing to go to secure their future galactic domination. In 52 BBY, Darth Plagueis, still consolidating his power and strategizing for the Sith's long-term goals, found himself involved in multiple secret endeavors, one of which was the pivotal meeting in the Outer Rim planet on Serrano. This meeting, hosted by Count Vemic, would introduce Plagueis to two key figures which would later play significant roles in the galaxy's future: Jedi Master Dooku and Jedi Knight Sifo Dyas. The backdrop of the meeting was a diplomatic dispute between the systems of Calanan and Serrano. Calanan had demanded transit taxes from ships traveling through their space to place a new hyperware transceiver, a move that would extend the reach of the HoloNet into the corporate sector. This change was deeply unpopular, especially among the systems in the Tingle Arm, and Plagueis saw it as an opportunity to exploit the growing discontent in the Outer Rim, a region he was keen to destabilize to further his Sith ambitions. While the political dispute was one of great importance to the Republic, Plagueis was more interested in taking the measure of Dooku, a Jedi Master increasingly critical of the Senate's corruption. Dooku's dissatisfaction with the Republic and the Senate had already become well known, and Plagueis saw an opportunity to recruit him as an ally, or perhaps as a potential asset to use against the Sith apprentice Darth Sidious, should the need arise. Dooku's growing cynicism and disillusionment with the Republic made him a figure of interest to the Sith Lord, who was always on the lookout for weaknesses in the Jedi Order and the Republic that could be exploited. During the meeting, Plagueis seized the opportunity to speak with several of the Jedi in attendance. He engaged in a heated discussion with Qui-Gon Jinn, who accused Plagueis and his business interests, particularly Damask Holdings, of stoking discontent in the Outer Rim for personal profit. While Plagueis defended his actions, the conversation turned to larger, more ominous concerns about the future of the Republic. It was here that Plagueis began to test the waters with Dooku and Sifo Dyas, speaking openly about the possibility of an impending war with the brewing tension between the core worlds and the more disfranchised outer systems. Dooku, a man already disillusioned with the Senate, admitted to the widespread corruption he saw within the Republic, acknowledging that something needed to change, but expressing doubts about whether any true reform could be achieved. He spoke bitterly about the inability of the Jedi to correct the wrongs within the Senate, believing that the Republic was beyond saving. On the other hand, Sifo Dyas, more cautious and loyal to the Republic's ideals, remained hesitant to acknowledge the full scale of the danger facing the galaxy, unwilling to admit that the war was on the horizon. In that moment, Plagueis saw an opportunity. He understood that the Jedi's greatest strength, their unwavering sense of duty and righteousness, could be used against them. Rather than creating an army to directly challenge the Jedi, Plagueis began to contemplate a more insidious plan. What if the Sith manipulated the Jedi into fighting alongside a clone army that was secretly engineered to betray them? This would not only destroy the Jedi, but also shift public perception, turning the Jedi from guardians of peace into enemies of justice and liberty in the eyes of the Republic. As Plagueis prepared to subtly plant the idea of the Kaminoans cloning project into the minds of Dooku and Sifo Dyas, he was interrupted by the presence of Jedi Master Jocasta Nu. Aware that revealing too much to the Jedi could be dangerous, Plagueis quickly ended the conversation, feeling a weight of the dark side warning him against further revealing his plans. He knew that the Jedi's loyalty to the Republic was their greatest weakness, and he would have to be patient to exploit it when the time was right. A short time later, Plagueis introduced Dooku and Sifo Dyas to his apprentice, Sidious, in a private meeting on Coruscant. Sidious, in his public guise as Senator Palpatine of Naboo, was preparing to address the Senate in a vote concerning the Trade Federation's interests. This meeting was significant not only because it brought together key players who would shape the galaxy's future, but also because it exposed the delicate web of manipulation that Plagueis and Sidious had spun. At the Senate, the Trade Federation was seeking to secure a favorable outcome in a vote concerning the taxation of several of their client systems. Although most expected Palpatine to vote against the Trade Federation's interests in line with his apparent opposition to their monopolistic practices, Palpatine surprised everyone by abstaining from the vote. This decision on Plagueis' orders tipped the scales in favor of the Trade Federation. It was a deliberate and calculated move, designed to sow discord and tension between the Republic's core worlds and the outer systems. The outcome was part of a larger Sith plan to create a secession crisis, one that would eventually lead to the collapse of the Republic and the rise of the Sith. In this moment, Plagueis' influence over the events unfolding in the Senate was becoming clear. His careful manipulation of both Sidious and the Jedi, as well as his ability to steer events from the shadows, showed that his vision for the galaxy's future was already well underway. His meeting with Dooku and Sifo-Dyas was just one piece of a larger puzzle, but it would prove to be a crucial step towards the coming galactic conflict, the very conflict that Plagueis and Sidious had been planning for all along. Plagueis defends himself during the Maladian attack. In 52 BBY, Plagueis attended Larsh Hill's order of the Canted Circle. Many influential beings attended the event, which also attended the gathering, including many moons from Damask Holdings and the IGBC. Larsh Hill, which was standing at the end of a circle, wore black robes, which 10 other moons did as well. The initiation ceremony would begin with the High Official joining Hill on the circle hymn, and placing around his neck the Order's signature pendant. That ceremony was offered to Plagueis 20 years prior, but Damask rejected it. The event's aims were narrow and the rituals were allegorical, filled with secret phases and handshakes. Although Plagueis understood the need to instill members with some furtive fraternity, he did not risk having the high officials know too much about his past, as it could unravel his secret identity and plans. Larsh Hill's past had been exhaustively shared, even the decades he had worked with Car Damask, as Plagueis had just returned from a short holo transmission with Sidious. Plagueis was filled with triumph. The Sun Guards in the event were leaving to kill the Grand Protectorate. As members of the Circle entered the building chatting with others, 11-4D rotated its head towards Plagueis to alarm him of danger. Without warning, the high official presiding over the ceremony gave a downward tug to the Hill's pendant, severing his head and throat. As Hill died, several other officials and members threw off their cloaks, revealing their true identities as Millennian assassins. These assassins began to throw dozens of decapitator discs, cutting down numerous moons within moments. 11-4D and Plagueis were both badly wounded by this abrupt attack, with one disc severing Plagueis' trachea and blood vessels on the side of his throat. He used the Force to clamp shut his wounds and prevent unconsciousness, before beginning to attack the Maladians with the Force. Simultaneously, Sate Prestige informed Palpatine that a Maladian faction had accepted a contract by the Grand Protectorate to carry out a major contract on Coruscant, involving someone of Damask Holdings. Realizing their target, Palpatine and Prestige swiftly made their way to the Order of the Canted Circle's location, where a heavily wounded Plagueis was lashing out with the dark side against his attackers. The two managed to defeat the assassins and save Plagueis' life. When Plagueis ordered Palpatine to call the Sun Guard, Palpatine denied this request, and told him he knew who had ordered this attack, and that he would deal with it personally. Darth Plagueis had survived the Maladian attack with grievous injuries. A considerable part of his lower face had been taken off by a decapitator disc that had also severed his trachea and several blood vessels. In order to survive, the Dark Lord had been forced to wear a type of transpirator, which covered his face below the nose. One standard month after the attack, Plagueis summoned Sidious to Abara to reveal the true nature of his studies and experiments to his apprentice. For the next 20 years, Damask lived an eremnic life in his laboratory, devoting all of his energy to the study of the midichlorians, while Palpatine devoted himself to the political machinations of the last stages of the grand plan entailed. Additionally, Sidious began training his own apprentice, Darth Maul, under Plagueis' watchful eye. The Moon found the Dathomirian Zabrak to be useful to the Sith, since he had been brought into Sidious' hands by his mother as a baby. Darth Plagueis, a Sith Lord, renowned for his pursuit of ultimate knowledge, devoted himself to exploring the Force through a scientific lens, rejecting the mystical interpretations traditionally upheld by the Jedi. His findings, recorded in a manuscript later referred to by Darth Sidious as the Book of the Sith, represented a groundbreaking perspective on the dark side and its relationship with biology. Plagueis categorized the Force into three distinct aspects: a Perion, corresponding to the unifying force, which focuses on the cosmic and long-term flow of events; Anima, which is the equivalent to the living force, emphasizing the here and now vitality of life; and Pneuma, reflecting conscious about how it manifests in the Force. His research centered on midichlorians, which he believed to be uniquely attuned to all three aspects of the Force. He theorized that a mastery over these microscopic entities could allow for the creation and extension of life, as well as control over death itself. However, Plagueis acknowledged that the three aspects of the Force could independently exist of the midichlorians. Plagueis' ambitions extended into extraordinary realms, including the manipulation of space-time and the preservation of consciousness beyond physical death. He even explored essence transfer, a technique for moving one spirit to another body. Seeking ancient wisdom, Plagueis visited Korriban's Valley of the Dark Lords. Despite his efforts, he found no answers in the tomb of Hakagram Graush or on the throne of Soros Sin. However, as he prepared to leave, he was confronted by the spirit of Marka Ragnos. The ancient Dark Lord admonished Plagueis for his attempts to abandon Korriban's traditions and questioned his claim to the Sith title. Despite this encounter, Ragnos offered no concrete answers, leaving Plagueis skeptical about the possibility of life after death. The manuscript also included Plagueis' reflections on the Mortis legend. He claimed that once he perfected the manipulation of midichlorians, creating the Chosen One to serve as an extension of his will, not as a savior of the Jedi, would be a trivial task. The text concluded with Plagueis' interpretation of the Sithari prophecy, which he viewed as a reflection of his own accomplishments. Despite dismissing the validity of prophecy altogether, Darth Plagueis' writings, while revolutionary, revealed his narrow focus and ultimate failure to perceive critical truths about the dark side, as noted by Darth Sidious in his introduction to the Book of the Sith. So first, to quote Darth Plagueis, "To say that the Force works in mysterious ways is to admit one's ignorance, for any mystery can be solved through the application of knowledge and unrelenting effort. As we had our way with the Senate, and as we soon will have our way with the Republic and the Jedi, we will have our way with the Force." By 42 BBY, Darth Plagueis achieved a grim milestone in his experiments with the Force and mortality. He ended the life of Venomous, a rival Sith, only to resurrect him and kill him repeatedly. This macabre cycle continued until Venomous's body finally gave out, his organs failing under the strain. Both Darth Sidious and the droid 11-4D bore witness to this ghastly display. Following this, Plagueis and Sidious entered a deep meditative state, using their combined will to tip the scales of the Force in favor of the dark side. Emboldened, Plagueis attempted an unprecedented feat, creating life itself. He reached out through the Force to the midichlorians scattered across the galaxy, poured his malicious intent into this act. His goal was to will a being of pure darkness into existence. The attempt failed. The Force, seemingly resistant to their efforts, grew silent. Shortly after, Plagueis' test subjects began succumbing to mysterious diseases. Recognizing the futility of continuing, he released many survivors. Some of the creatures he experimented on adapted to the wilds of Sojourn and the planet he used as his base. Plagueis theorized that the Force was actively resisting the Sith's attempt to pervert its nature. Every failure in his mind was evidence of this cosmic opposition. Yet he remained undeterred, seeing each setback as a challenge to be overcome in his relentless quest for ultimate power. In 33 BBY, Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious orchestrated the Yinkori Uprising, a pivotal conflict designed to further their dark ambitions. The Yinkori, a newly admitted species to the Galactic Republic and immune to Jedi mind tricks, were incited by the Sith to wage war. Plagueis saw the Yinkori as potential candidates to train and host a secret cloned army meant to annihilate the Jedi. Although this plan never materialized, the conflict's resolution significantly advanced the Sith's grand design. The Yinkori Uprising resulted in the deaths of 7 Jedi, including a Jedi Council member, delivering a blow to the Order. However, the Sith's objectives extended beyond mere bloodshed. The Yinkori, resistant to telepathic influence, were subdued and confined to their homeworld, removing them as a future threat to the Sith domination. More consequently, the conflict destabilized the already precarious tenure of Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum. The chaos and perceived failures during the uprising eroded Valorum's political standing, paving the way for Senator Palpatine's eventual rise to power. The Yinkori Uprising thus became a cornerstone in the Sith's long-term strategy, marking a decisive step towards their ultimate goal, the fall of the Jedi and the Republic's transformation into the Galactic Empire. By 33 BBY, Darth Sidious was deeply involved in orchestrating unrest among the Outer Rim as part of the Sith Grand Plan. His goal was to destabilize the Galactic Republic by fostering rebellion among the distant star systems. While Sidious kept his master, Darth Plagueis, informed of these efforts, Plagueis rarely intervened, choosing instead to focus on his experiments with midichlorians and the manipulation of life itself. However, Plagueis grew interested when Sidious deployed his apprentice, Darth Maul, on a critical mission to the infamous prison known as Cog Hive 7. Maul's objective was to locate and confront Iram Radik, a powerful arms dealer with significant influence. This mission was part of Sidious's broader strategy to manipulate the rogue Force-worshipping cult known as the Bando Gora. The cult's resources were key to acquiring a devastating weapon that Sidious intended to use to eliminate Plagueis. Recognizing the significance of the mission, Plagueis assigned Vesto Cypher, an agent of the Intergalactic Banking Clan, also known as the IBC, to covertly observe Maul's progress. This additional layer of oversight reflected Plagueis' growing awareness of the potential threat Sidious posed to his own power. As Varuna's attempt to eliminate Darth Plagueis led to his ultimate downfall and death, orchestrated by the Sith Lord himself, King Aris Varuna summoned Senator Palpatine to Theed, interrupting his trip to the Iradu summit. At Varuna's place, Palpatine was seated before the king, surrounded by Varuna's corrupt allies, including Alexei Garin of the Black Sun Syndicate, Gardul the Hutt, and members of the Bando Gora cult. The meeting was tense, with Varuna offering drinks and mocking laughter filling the room, except from Palpatine. Varuna confronted Palpatine about his political maneuvers, accusing him of plotting with the Trade Federation and supporting Padme Nabiri's rise to power. While Palpatine denied these claims, Varuna revealed he had incriminating evidence against both Palpatine and the Sith Master Darth Plagueis. The king declared Palpatine would lose his senatorial position, replaced by Lego Kun, and boldly proclaimed Palpatine would never see Plagueis again. Meanwhile, Darth Plagueis and his droid assistant 11-4D were eradicating evidence of their experiments on the moon of Sojourn. They slaughtered all test subjects, wiped data, and destroyed equipment before preparing to flee aboard the Scimitar. As they departed, a flotilla launched a relentless attack on the moon, nearly striking their ship with laser fire. The bombardment culminated in the detonation of a nuclear device, obliterating Sojourn's forests, fortress, and everything on the surface. Plagueis and 11-4D narrowly escaped, docking with Jabba the Hutt's ship, Star Jewel, which provided them sanctuary. Plagueis soon contacted Varuna, revealing his survival and terrifying the king into abdicating with the throne and fleeing Theed. Varuna went into hiding in Naboo's western reaches, but Plagueis, with the help of Darth Sidious, tracked him down. Rejecting Sidious's suggestion to send Darth Maul, Plagueis opted to confront Varuna personally. Plagueis infiltrated Varuna's ancestral estate, the Count of Vismance, and confronted the former king in his bedroom. Using the Force, Plagueis immobilized Varuna, choking him and preventing him from calling for his security chief. The Sith Lord revealed his role in Varuna's rise to power and allegiance to the Sith, terrifying the deposed monarch. Plagueis then manipulated Varuna's midichlorians, slowly and painfully killing him. Varuna begged for mercy, offering his continued service, but Plagueis declared his death more valuable as it would fuel his own power. Varuna's demise served both revenge and strategy. His death removed a threat to the Sith and further inflamed the Neimoidians, pushing them closer to supporting the invasion of Naboo. This move aligned with the Sith's grand plan, setting the stage for future galactic upheaval. The invasion of Naboo was a pivotal moment in the Sith's grand plan to seize control of the galaxy. It began as a response to the Galactic Senate's controversial taxation of free trade zones, which threatened the profits of the Trade Federation. Manipulated by Darth Sidious, the Sith apprentice to Darth Plagueis, Trade Federation Viceroy Newt Gunray orchestrated a blockade of Naboo. Despite concerns about previous security breaches, including the Monkar Pavan hologram incident and compromised droid foundries on Ace and Alaris Prime, the blockade proceeded under Sidious's directive. Darth Plagueis, the true architect of the Sith's long-term strategy, had initially ordered a delay in the blockade to avoid political complications during the Supreme Chancellor's candidates' rally on Coruscant. To prepare for the future Clone Wars, Plagueis ensured the relocation of Bactoid armors, droid manufacturing facilities to the remote planet of Geonosis, shielding their operations from prying eyes. Complicating matters further, the Sith holocron linked to the Monkar Pavan incident ended up in unexpected hands. Darth Maul, tasked with retrieving the holocron, pursued it to the Perilimnian orbital facility during the Chancellor's rally. Through a series of mishaps, Lord Pavan inadvertently delivered the holocron to Senator Palpatine, Darth Sidious's public identity. While this near catastrophe could have exposed the Sith's plans, it ultimately strengthened their position, as Plagueis interpreted it as the dark side's intervention. With the holocron secure, Sidious gave the green light for Gunray to commence the blockade. The Trade Federation's freighters encircled Naboo, warning that attempts to breach the embargo would be met with deadly force. Gunray threatened to starve the planet's population unless the Senate revealed its new trade regulations. Recognizing the delicate nature of the crisis, Supreme Chancellor Valorum secretly enlisted the Jedi Order for a diplomatic mission. Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi were sent as envoys to negotiate with the Trade Federation. This covert move blindsided both Sith Lords, who had underestimated Valorum's willingness to act bold despite political restrictions on the Jedi Order after prior controversies. Fearing exposure and the erosion of their carefully laid plans, Plagueis and Sidious escalated their strategy. They ordered the Trade Federation to assassinate the Jedi envoys and to expedite their invasion of Naboo. Viceroy Gunray was assured that the Sith would make their actions appear legal. The plan hinged on coercing Queen Amidala of Naboo into signing a treaty legitimizing the Federation's occupation and granting them control of the planet's plasma resources. The Sith's ultimate goal was to secure Naboo as a foothold for their broader ambitions. As part of the grand plan, this seemingly localized conflict was a step towards destabilizing the Republic and concentrating power under Sith control. Plagueis declared, "It is the will of the dark side that we finally reveal ourselves," a sentiment echoed by Sidious, who ensured that his apprentice Darth Maul was ready to enforce their will. The invasion of Naboo set the stage for a broader galactic confrontation. The Trade Federation's droid armies descended upon the planet, subjugating its people and enforcing their control. Padme, refusing to let her people suffer, sought aid from the Republic, setting in motion a chain of events that would ignite a larger conflict known as the Clone Wars. This carefully orchestrated invasion marked a significant milestone in the Sith's resurgence, demonstrating their ability to manipulate galactic politics, military power, and even the Jedi Order itself to further their dark agenda. During a political gathering at the Pelemian orbital facility above Coruscant, hosted by Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum, Darth Plagueis, under his public identity as Higo Damask, seized an opportunity to approach Jedi Master Sifo Dyas. The event was attended by prominent figures such as Master Yoda, Mace Windu, Adi Gallia, and Joruus C'baoth. At the time, the galaxy was teetering on the edge of civil war, heightening Sifo Dyas's already dire concerns about the Republic's security. However, the Jedi Council continued to dismiss his warnings, leaving him isolated in his fears. Recognizing Sifo Dyas's vulnerability, Plagueis manipulated his growing anxiety. He argued that the Republic urgently needed a military force to defend itself before it was too late. Echoing sentiments he had shared with Sifo Dyas decades earlier on Serrano, Plagueis once again spoke of an impending darkness, which Sifo Dyas, once a skeptic, now fully believed. This time, Plagueis escalated his proposition, revealing the existence of cloners on Kamino who could produce a formidable army. He assured Sifo Dyas that the process would be swift, with an army of 1 million soldiers already within a decade. Plagueis further tempted him by offering to finance the operation through untraceable funds maintained in Outer Rim banks. Although hesitant to act without the Council's approval, Sifo Dyas was swayed enough to seriously consider Plagueis' proposal. The Sith Lord had planted the seeds of an idea that would later grow into a pivotal development for the galaxy. After the events of the Battle of Theed and the death of Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, Count Dooku left the Jedi Order and eventually aligned himself with Darth Sidious, embracing the dark side. Around this time, Sifo Dyas, having resolved his internal conflict, approached the Kaminoans to commission a clone army for the Republic. Using funds secretly provided by Plagueis through Damask Holdings, he made a down payment to initiate the cloning process. As part of the project, Dooku, now operating as Darth Tyrannus, recruited Jango Fett, a renowned bounty hunter who had recently succeeded in capturing Kamori Vosa, the leader of the Bando Gora. Fett was selected as the genetic template for the clone army. Unbeknownst to Sifo Dyas, his actions had not gone unnoticed. Darth Sidious and Dooku, aware of his clandestine dealings, began plotting to eliminate him. Sifo Dyas's involvement with the clone army would ultimately cost him his life, leaving his vision of a republic defended by clones to be manipulated for the Sith's grander schemes. As Palpatine's influence grew in Coruscant's political arena, Darth Plagueis continued his obsessive pursuit of immortality. By 34 BBY, he believed he was nearing a breakthrough that would allow him and his apprentice Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, to transcend death. However, during the Naboo crisis of 32 BBY, their focus shifted when they learned of Anakin Skywalker, a slave boy from Tatooine with immense Force potential. Born at the heart of the Force Vergence, Anakin's existence coincided with a time when Plagueis and Sidious had flooded the galaxy with the dark side of the Force a decade earlier. Plagueis became convinced that the midichlorians, defying his unnatural manipulations of the Force, had retaliated by creating a savior, the prophesied Chosen One, destined to restore balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. This chilling realization struck a nerve in Plagueis, as he had once boasted of creating or fathering such a being himself. Now he feared that his hubris and experiments had inadvertently set the stage for the Sith's destruction. When Palpatine informed Plagueis that the boy had arrived on Coruscant, Plagueis decided he must see Anakin with his own eyes. Using a mind trick, he gained access to Palpatine's quarters, where Anakin was staying as a guest of Queen Amidala. However, a handmaiden informed him that he had just missed the boy. For the first time, Plagueis was gripped by fear, an unshakable sense that the Sith's grand plans could be undone by this child. He blamed himself for what he interpreted as the Force's retaliation against his blasphemous attempts to reshape the galaxy. Determined to prevent Anakin from being trained by the Jedi, Plagueis spied on the Queen and the Jedi as they departed Coruscant. From a distance, he caught the first glimpse of Anakin and was immediately overwhelmed by a vision. In it, he saw a terrifying figure, a cyborg clad in dark armor, a dark helmet obscuring its face, exuding the essence of death and power. The vision confirmed Plagueis' fears. This boy would alter the galaxy's fate, potentially in ways that could destroy the Sith. To stop this future from taking shape, Plagueis made a fateful decision. He ordered Sidious to ensure Qui-Gon Jinn, the Jedi who had discovered Anakin, was killed. Plagueis believed that Qui-Gon, a maverick Jedi with an unusual understanding of the Force, posed the greatest risk of guiding Anakin to fulfill the Chosen One prophecy. Sidious, recognizing the potential threat posed by Qui-Gon's apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, on the cusp of earning his knighthood, further instructed that both Jedi be eliminated. As Darth Maul was dispatched to carry out the mission, Plagueis' fears and obsession deepened. The boy was not just a random prodigy, he was a pivotal figure in the Force's grand design. For Plagueis, Anakin Skywalker had become the ultimate prize and the ultimate threat. He resolved to do whatever was necessary to ensure the Sith's survival, no matter what the cost. On the eve of a monumental shift in galactic history, Darth Plagueis, the Sith Lord who had long pursued immortality, found himself in a false moment of triumph. Plagueis had dismissed his elite Sun Guard for the night, retreating to his luxurious penthouse with his apprentice Darth Sidious and his droid 11-4D. The occasion was celebratory. Sidious was poised to ascend into the position of Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, making a critical step in the Sith's grand plan for dominance. As they settled in, Plagueis and Sidious shared glasses of Sulistan wine. Sidious flattered his master, praising Plagueis' intricate manipulations that had led him to his precipice of power. He vowed to live up to Plagueis' expectations and rehearsed his speech for the Senate the following day, where he would speak for the Republic's millennium-long endurance and the contributions of shadowy figures like Plagueis himself. Under his alias Higo Damask II, with each iteration, Plagueis provided feedback, and Sidious made adjustments, refining the address. Throughout the evening, Sidious encouraged Plagueis to drink more wine, using the intoxicating beverage to dull his master's sharp mind and physical awareness. Plagueis, suspicious at first, eventually succumbed to his apprentice's insistence. As the wine flowed, the Sith Lord's defenses eroded. He began to slip into a vulnerable state of slumber, utterly aware of the looming betrayal. When Plagueis finally fell into a heavy sleep, Sidious prepared to leave. However, the dark side itself whispered to him, urging him to seize the moment and kill his master. Succumbing to the call of the power of the dark side, Sidious turned back, his resolve hardened. With a surge of Force lightning, Sidious struck Plagueis, jolting the moon from his sleep. The attack was relentless, and as Plagueis struggled to react, Sidious mocked him, savoring his betrayal. The Dark Lord's breathing apparatus, vital to his survival, was destroyed by the lightning, leaving Plagueis to suffocate. He attempted to rise and fight back, but his intoxication rendered him helpless. As Plagueis writhed, his fear of death, something he had long believed he had conquered through his experiments with metachlorians, consumed him. He clung to life with desperation, but his apprentice's onslaught of lightning proved overwhelming. Gradually, his body failed him, and his life came to an end. In death, Plagueis unleashed a final burst of darkside energy, a cataclysmic ripple that echoed across Coruscant, briefly overwhelming Sidious and knocking him unconscious. Despite the immense power of this release, Plagueis' body remained intact, a silent testament to his ambition and ultimate failure. Sidious rose from the aftermath as the sole Dark Lord of the Sith, carrying forward the legacy of his former master. With Plagueis gone, the galaxy stood on the brink of the Sith's long-awaited revenge, a plan centuries in the making, now fully within Sidious's grasp. Thus ended the dark life of Darth Plagueis the Wise, the Sith who sought to cheat death but fell victim to the greed and ambition of his own apprentice, proving once again the treacherous nature of the dark side. The galaxy, preoccupied with the rise of the newly elected Supreme Chancellor, scarcely noticed the passing of Higo Damask. Once a prominent figure, he had retreated into obscurity for the last 2 decades of his life. His death merited only a few sparse obituaries, which offered little more than basic public facts. Members of the intergalactic banking clan remained silent on the specifics of his funeral and the fate of his vast holdings. Unbeknownst to most, Higo Damask was in truth Darth Plagueis, the Sith Lord who sought ultimate mastery over life and death. His apprentice, Darth Sidious, secretly cremated his master's remains and preserved the ashes in one of the 2 Sith spirit urns that adorned the entrance to his private office on Coruscant. Plagueis' teachings profoundly shaped Sidious, but the apprentice never fully grasped his master's greatest secret, the power to cheat death by manipulating the midichlorians. Sidious' own attempt at immortality fell short of Plagueis' ambitions. Instead of mastering the ability to prevent death, Sidious relied on transferring his essence into clone bodies to extend his life, a flawed form of survival that ultimately led to his downfall. Darth Tyrannus, another of Sidious' apprentices, was given only scant knowledge of Plagueis, knowing him merely as the mysterious financier Higo Damask. However, Sidious wielded his former master's legend as a weapon of temptation. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise became a pivotal tool in seducing Anakin Skywalker to the dark side. Sidious promised that Plagueis had discovered a way to save others from dying, a power Anakin desperately sought to preserve the life of his wife Padme Amidala. Ironically, Plagueis himself could not save his own life, a bitter twist that sealed his fate at Darth Sidious's hands. Despite his secretive nature, Sidious acknowledged Plagueis' influence on Sith philosophy. After reshaping the Republic into the Galactic Empire, he transcribed fragments of his master's scientific journals into the Book of the Sith. This manuscript, containing insights on the dark side and the infamous Abora experiments, became part of Sidious's archive at Mount Tantus on Wayland. Years later, Luke Skywalker recovered these dark relics, including Plagueis' journal, which offered tantalizing glimpses into Sith lore. In years following Plagueis' demise, some members of the Sith cult known as the Apex Society believed that their leader, Colin Islow, communed with the spirits of Sith Lords, including Darth Plagueis. However, true resurrection eluded even Sidious. Though he claimed a form of immortality through cloning, he was ultimately vanquished by Luke Skywalker and the New Jedi Order. Historians in the New Republic struggled to uncover reliable details about Darth Plagueis. Sidious had erased nearly every trace of his master from the galaxy's collective memory. One of the few surviving records was of the Wovlud manuscript, a rare Jedi resource that referenced Plagueis. Additionally, the rediscovered Book of the Sith further provided insight into his dark experiments. Even decades after his death, the precise circumstances of Plagueis' murder and the full extent of his power remained shrouded in mystery. By 36 ABY, the Galactic Alliance could only sketch the broad outlines of his enigmatic life, and the true story of the Moon's Sith Lord lingered in the shadows, an enduring darkness, ambition, and tragic irony. Darth Plagueis was a complex and enigmatic figure driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge and mastery over the Force. He embraced the dark side not simply for power, but for understanding that the deepest mysteries of existence. Despite being labeled a mystic, Plagueis was a rationalist at heart, seeking to unravel the secrets of life and death through scientific and metaphysical study. He dismissed the existence of Force ghosts and regarded prophecies with skepticism, even after encountering the supposed specter of the ancient Sith Lord Marco Ragnos. His fascination lay in arcane, yet his pursuits were firmly grounded in the material world, where he sought to bend life itself to his will. Above all, Plagueis was obsessed with the prospect of eternal life. His relentless pursuit of immortality led him to study the spontaneous generation of life and manipulate midichlorians, the microscopic entities that connected living beings to the Force. He believed the power to control life and death should remain the privilege of the strong, not the common masses, whom he regarded as expendable. To him, life was both priceless and functionally worthless, valuable only insofar as it could be used to further his ambitions. This philosophy guided his belief that only those whose work complemented his own were worthy of preservation, while billions of others perished without consequence. In his relationships, Plagueis adhered to the Sith Code, rejecting conventional morality and emotional attachments as weakness. However, he shared a unique bond with his apprentice, Darth Sidious, driven by a desire to break the cycle of death that had defined Sith succession since the era of Darth Bane. Instead of being slain by his apprentice, Plagueis envisioned a new path where master and apprentice would achieve immortality together, making the need for succession obsolete. Yet this trust proved to be his downfall, as Sidious ultimately betrayed and murdered him. Plagueis' intellect was formidable, characterized by a sharp, logical mind and a methodical approach to power. He believed that true dominion began with mastery over oneself and culminated in control over the galaxy. His writings on the Force reflected his intellectual depth, often encoded with cryptic symbols and backward characters to obscure his secrets. As his mastery grew, so did his fear. He feared only the loss of his power, a terror that shaped his every action. Despite his unprecedented achievements, Plagueis' arrogance and inability to foresee treachery led to his demise. His overconfidence, compounded by a rare maxichlorian infection that hindered his precognitive abilities, blinded him to Sidious's manipulation. Ironically, the Sith Lord who sought to overcome death fell victim to the very cycle of betrayal he had tried to escape. In his final reflections, Plagueis held that the knowledge of immortality was too dangerous for the unworthy, fearing that widespread access would destabilize civilization. He viewed life as a resource to be exploited. A common element like Tibanna gas or a nova crystal is valuable only when harnessed by those who had the will to wield it. For Plagueis, existence itself was a tool, and the true measure of power lay in its mastery. So what did you guys think of the full life of Darth Plagueis? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, join the Sith Citadel Discord, links in the description, and consider becoming a join member or sending a super thanks if you wish to further support the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.